Sutra, set the subject that things in Pamir Link with the Shiram Yedana, which you was a Tunjo control the chance of Drokam chassis when Bajin the Sam Baja Chujian. Javi of the judging justice and nervous engagement order to Shijikal Cherub Jungojin Zebon to the General Baja de Mokunis. Kagyu Rumbajala Chance of Jindima to Chopjishin and Nazar to Bosing and to the Basso, there's a change of those. UK seems like quite cold, right? It's quite cold. After a few days, I'm going back to India. It's very hot there. So I hope maybe I can find a better temperature sometime on the sky. So yes, today's subject is the Sutra of 3 sections, so Sutra of Confession. And because this is a Mahayana Sutra, and usually we have the tradition of giving rise to bodhicitta, thinking that for me, it's important to have this motivation that I'm going to talk about it, so that I can benefit as many sentient beings as possible, and also, if possible, all sentient beings. I don't think I can benefit all sentient beings, but that's the motivation we should have. And also from your side, you should have the motivation that you're going to receive these teachings, study this sutra, and most importantly, practice this sutra, so that you can benefit all sentient beings. So please first give rise to that motivation, okay? I just feel like it's, sometimes in Buddhism we talk about the motivation is the most important thing. Sometimes I feel like, were you in the Samye meeting when talk about this sutra?
No.
Okay. Otherwise you might fall asleep. You can't blame me for that. Then you might think you haven't improved at all. You're just saying the same thing. I did have improved. But not in this sutra, okay? So I feel like, sometimes we misunderstand, thinking that if we have a good motivation, then it's good, it's virtue, it's dhamma, but that's not the case. Quite often in Buddhism we talk about three negative emotions: desire, anger, ignorance. So, when we talk about desire and anger, it's like, we know them very well. Like, we know what you're talking about, right? We really feel like, okay, we know it. But when we talk about ignorance, we don't really know what you're talking about. Ignorance is not familiar. I heard about it, and now I have it. But when? When was the ignorance? What was the ignorance? It's so difficult to, it's so difficult. So my understanding is, anything that maybe not really desire, not really anger, but all other things that causes sufferings to us, they are ignorance really. Most of them are actually ignorance. Even desire, in some way, sometimes desire, for desire and anger, ignorance is like the root, but sometimes ignorance itself is like the result, It's quite, we think ignorance is like very passive, right? Not functioning very actively, but actually quite often ignorance is really, playing a very, important role in our life. So that's why, when we talk about motivation, sometimes we think, okay, if I have a good motivation, then it's enough, but it's not. And that's why we have to study it, that's why we have to, think carefully. We have to, whenever we do something, we have to examine what consequence will you bring, I can't just say I had a good motivation, so even if you are harmed, I'm not responsible. That's not the Dharma. That's not how Dharma works. That's how the legal things works maybe, but not Dharma, okay? In Dharma, we are responsible for everything. Even when we talk about law of karma, it's actually taking responsibility, right? We take responsibility for what we do, and that's what karma means. And, usually people think, okay, if you have no problem, nobody saw it, there's no CCTV camera, I'm saved. But for karma, we are taking responsibility. So that's why, in that case, it's very important to examine our motivation, examine the action, examine the consequences, and so many things. So that's why, even to benefit beings, just to have a good motivation is not enough. We need a lot of wisdom too. Okay? That's why in Buddhism we talk about the importance of combining wisdom and method. Okay? So that's why motivation is not enough. Good motivation is not enough. But for anything that we do, in the beginning is very, very important. It's like, if I have to, today or tomorrow I'm going to British Museum, right?
Today.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to British Museum. You guys have a nice time. Okay, so let's say I'm going to British Museum. And in the beginning, if I don't know where I'm going, then I might end up anywhere, right? I won't get to British Museum. So the beginning is very important. I have to make sure where I'm going. So in the same way, as beginning, whatever we do, beginning is very important. So that's why in the beginning, it's very important to have a good motivation. Even for me, I really noticed, actually, like how it is taught in Buddhism, I always really feel that one of the main reasons why I believe in Buddhism, personally speaking, is mainly because of, like how it is taught in Buddhism. The mind is really so important. It's not a thing. What do you say? It's not just about the mind, but mind really is very, very important thing. It's not like we can be happy without anything. Just having a good mind is enough. It's not like that. But mind really determines a lot, right? And turning of mind over mind, be it over own happiness, also for the other people that we interact in our life, for everyone the training of mind is really, really important. That's for sure, and that's what the Buddhism is all about. For me, that is the one, what to say, that is from where my inspiration to learn Buddhism comes. Okay, so in this way, I usually feel like even for me when I come to teach, there are different ways of looking at it. So quite often we feel like, okay, I have to talk. People call me, okay, come to Samye Dzong and give teaching. And then first thing we will think, we won't think, okay, I am a teacher. We won't think that much. Like we have to teach. How can I teach? We're not really sure whether we can teach or not. There might be people who knows, all these things, right? So usually, I notice that our mentality is more like I have to talk. How long I have to talk? 1 hour and 30 minutes. What should I talk? So then it becomes more difficult. It becomes more challenging. It becomes like a obligation, some sort of work. But then if I think about, okay, I want to teach this thing. This is something so important. And I might have some wisdom or some insight or some knowledge about it. I want to share this with people so that hopefully maybe 60% might already know it, but maybe there are a few people who doesn't know about it. Then if I can benefit them, that's enough. So I want to teach. I want to share my knowledge. I want to help people, and then it really becomes much easier, much easier. So even for these things, it's the motivation. I've come to know that the motivation is really, really important. Okay, so that's why it's the tradition to give bodhicitta before we receive teaching in anything. And for the Sutra of 3 sections. And before we go for this, so my my goal for this teaching, my goal for this teaching is in some way, can I ask a question, like how many of you read these? Okay, like sometimes, okay, raise your hands if you read it every day. I think every day is quite difficult. Okay, wonderful. Even for me, I actually really try, but it's quite difficult, because usually I want to read it before I go to sleep. And before I go to bed, it seems like it's very urgent, I need to sleep. But whenever I time, I read it, okay? So raise your hands if you read it sometime. Okay. And raise your hand if you never read it. Okay. So anyway, goal is to, what to say, because I did a little bit of research about it. I studied about it a little bit, so I hope, even though we have this tradition of chanting it in Tibetan Buddhism, but our knowledge about this sutra is very little, because not everyone do research or study about it. And also, usually in Tibetan Buddhism, we just read it. There's no such thing as class or 3 sections, class for the Sutra of 3 sections. There's no teacher who's teaching it. So very few people know about it. And then my goal is to maybe share some of my knowledge about it so that we can have a connection with it. And then those who doesn't read it, I hope I can inspire you a little bit so that you will have interest in reading it. And those who already read or chant as much as you can. I hope you can have more faith, more inspiration, so that you can really respect it. Okay? So for that, I want to, I don't want you to think like, okay, this is class, this is a class and we have to listen to him and then he must speak in a certain way. I hope, if you don't understand or something, you have question or something, just ask me. Okay? Don't worry. I'm not powerful enough to punish anyone. Okay? You guys are more powerful. Okay. So, so to understand this sutra, I think it's important to know that from where this sutra comes. Okay? So in Buddhism, usually we have 3 different traditions. 3 different traditions, which is most people know, Theravada Buddhism, and Mahayana Buddhism, and Vajrayana Buddhism. Okay, we have 3 different traditions. Sometimes people think, okay, so they have these 3 different traditions, so that's why maybe they don't like each other or something. No, we have no problem. Okay, no such problem at all. Okay. Theravada Buddhism, I think some of them, very few of them, criticize Mahayana teaching a little bit, which is understandable. And Mahayana looked down on Theravada Buddhism a little bit. But there's not a conflict. And I heard in Taiwan and some Chinese countries where some of the Mahayana Buddhist people, they criticize Vajrayana teachings a little bit. And I personally think, there's a point. There is a point, really. There is a point. I always think, even though I follow Mahayana Buddhism, the Vajrayana Buddhism, which is the main tradition of Buddhism in Tibet, but I really, whenever people want to practice Vajrayana Buddhism, I really want you to be very careful. Okay, Vajrayana Buddhism is really not for random people. Okay, it's always much better, much safe. To be honest, I even think, Tibetan Buddhist teachers, I feel like they have more controversy, more rumors, and more troubles than the teachers of other 2 traditions, really. I almost never heard anything from other 2 traditions. Maybe I belong to Tibetan Buddhist tradition, but in Tibetan Buddhist tradition, there's always something happening. There's always news, rumor, something. But that doesn't mean that, all the Vajrayana Buddhist teachers are bad or it's not a good religion or something, There are great practitioners. There are genuine great lamas. But the problem is it's very hard to find them. Okay? Once you find them, then it's really like you won the lottery. Okay? So we have these 3 traditions. And it's important to understand the differences between these 3 traditions too, because sometimes people think like, okay, we are Vajrayana Buddhists, so we are not Mahayana Buddhists. They are Theravada Buddhism, so we are different, Even for us, even for Tibetan Buddhist people, we have that problem. But The difference is more like Theravada Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism, the difference is in the goal, for the objective goals, okay? Because for Theravada Buddhism, the ultimate goal is to achieve the liberation, okay? Achieve the liberation. And so what happens when we achieve liberation is there will be no more suffering, no more negative emotions, and we will not born in this samsara anymore. That's the goal. And for Mahayana Buddhism, the goal is to achieve enlightenment. Goal is to achieve enlightenment. And according to both Theravada Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism, one can achieve enlightenment only after achieving liberation. Liberation, even according to Theravada Buddhism, liberation is lower than enlightenment. Buddha has achieved enlightenment, but even according to Theravada Buddhism, not all his disciples achieve the same level of Buddha. Okay, because his disciples, even the greatest disciples of Buddha, they only achieve the liberation, not the enlightenment. But then for Mahayana Buddhism, we talk about, okay, it's possible to achieve enlightenment. Okay, then why not try to achieve that enlightenment? Why should we just be content with not suffering, having no negative emotion? Why can't we try to achieve the state of enlightenment by achieving it? Not only we don't have any negative emotions, but also we have so many positive qualities. And also, it's not just we have no more suffering, but we can actually benefit more beings. And not just not having negative emotions, but our mind becomes perfect at that point. And that perfection of mind is called enlightenment. And it's possible. And then if it's possible, why stop at the liberation level? So that's why in Mahayana Buddhism, we promote people to give rise to bodhicitta, to be a bodhisattva and practice this path. Okay? But the thing is, even to achieve enlightenment, we have to achieve the liberation. And the way to achieve liberation is better taught in Theravada tradition. So that's why even for Mahayana Buddhists, we also need Theravada tradition. Okay? The Theravada Buddhists, they practice all these 4 Noble Truths, 8 Fold Noble Paths, and so on. All these things we actually need, even for Vajrayana Buddhists. So we actually need all of them. Okay? But if they don't want to practice Mahayana Buddhism, that for them it's totally okay, because their goal is not to achieve enlightenment. There's nothing wrong, okay? So usually Mahayana Buddhism and Theravada Buddhism, sometimes we even use the term Hinayana, lesser vehicle, which is not a good term. But here we also have to remember, like we belong to Mahayana Buddhism. When we talk about these 2 traditions, I think it's a fact that in terms of the tradition, the Mahayana seems really better, because in Theravada tradition it's very good, talking about not harming anyone. But in Mahayana Buddhism, it's really talking about benefiting anyone, every sentient being, compassion to all sentient beings, and so on. Then of course, in terms of the tradition, Mahayana tradition really seems to be better. But in terms of people, we are not saying that we are better than them. In many cases, they are much better. Really, they're much better. So we have to respect the traditions, okay? And then for the Vajrayana Buddhists, Vajrayana Buddhism, there is a Mahayana Buddhism and Vajrayana Buddhism, because usually ultimate goal for the Vajrayana Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism is the same, to achieve enlightenment. So that's why sometimes both of them are considered as Mahayana Buddhism. Okay? The other one, traditionally known as Mahayana Buddhism, sometimes we call it Mahayana Sutra tradition. The Vajrayana we call Tantra tradition. But both of them, they have the same goal. But the difference between these 2 is that usually in Mahayana Buddhism, what we say is to achieve enlightenment is possible, but it takes a long time, countless lifetimes. Okay, so it takes a long time. And in Vajrayana Buddhism, we talk about the possibility of achieving enlightenment in this very lifetime too. And for that, we talk about having some practices that are far more skillful than the practices that are taught in the Sutra tradition. So these are like visualizing deities, chanting mantras, and then using our own body to create realization and experiences, which are now taught in Sutra tradition. Okay, so that's why usually we talk about between Mahayana Sutra tradition and between Vajrayana tradition, the difference is not in the goals but in the methods. Okay, the special methods of Vajrayana tradition are like visualizing deities, reciting mantra, and using our own body to do meditation and so on. Okay, like we talk about channels, drops, and so on. Like in Tibet, some of the practitioners, they are staying in this snow mountain, right? Even recently, I found it quite inspiring. To be honest, conventionally speaking, I'm Buddhist by birth. But I don't know. I don't know why. I felt like ever since I was very small, I used to chant these things a lot. Because my family, it's our tradition, we have to chant a lot. And then we supplicate, every evening after the dinner, we have to chant for like 30 minutes or something. Sometimes I am the chanting master. I don't know why, but maybe I was not a Buddhist in my past life, or I don't know. I always had this doubt. I always used to think, okay, I was very small, okay, but I used to like to think. So I always think what if, when we talk about dharma, when we talk about law of karma, it's almost like, we have to take all the laws and to, give the advantage to people or something like that. Then I was like, what if I always follow these and then when I die, there's nothing? What if I practice my whole life and then when I die, what if there's nothing, But it's our society, nobody can answer these questions. They will just say rubbish, right? Stop asking these questions. Nobody has the knowledge to answer these questions. But in Buddhism, actually, at least, there's no such thing as you're not allowed to ask questions. Especially the great teachers, if the more difficult question you ask, the more they will like it. Then they will think, okay, here's something. And then they really want to think, and then they really want to find the answer, some logical answer. But because, in my family, nobody studied. In fact, I didn't even know that Buddha was a person. In Sutra, in Mahayana Sutra, sometimes he says when Buddha, he delivered this teaching, that it was so profound that the whole earth shook, What is the past tense of shake? Shook? Shook, okay. The whole earth shook. He's actually here to check my English. I told him to check my English. Okay. So her whole earth shook. Sometimes he says when the east is high, the west is, west is low. When the west is high, the east is low, all these things. So I asked my grandfather, what does it mean? And then he said, the Buddha, he's so great that at one point, he always stayed in the heaven, Pure Land. So once he thought of coming to this earth, but he has so much blessing that earth couldn't lift him. So he returned back. Then I always thought, okay, Buddha never came to this world. Then later, when I learned that they're talking about Buddha is born in India or something, I was shocked, I thought he never came to India. I thought he never came to this world. So our knowledge about Buddhism is very limited. So that's why, what I was talking about? You even have to remind me, okay? What I was talking about, do anyone remember?
Different traditions.
Huh?
Different traditions.
Yeah, but after that, a little bit after that. Okay, family before that. Okay, I always have doubt. Thank you, thank you. Okay, you came out reason. Okay, so I always have this doubt, you know, wondering, but still, that information is not enough. Okay, so I always have. Okay, at one point I always have this doubt, you know, what if, you know, whatever taught in this dharmas, if they are not true or something. So in some way, what I can say is that I'm not Buddhist by birth. Okay? That's what I'm saying. I'm not Buddhist by birth. Because I was not Buddhist, even when I was reading all these things. And even after I became monk, you know, I became monk because of, you know, I had an uncle who said, you should be monk. Okay. Then I became monk. Okay. Even after being Buddhist, I feel like, you know, I was not really a Buddhist. I mean, I always had these questions in my mind. Okay. So anyway, I don't remember the main point from where I got this. But don't worry, I'm not embarrassed at all. Okay, I don't remember. Okay, then either way there are these three traditions. Okay, there are three traditions. One is this Vajrayana tradition. So in Vajrayana tradition, so okay, now I really remember. So I always had this doubt. Okay, so sometimes I also feel like, you know, what if, you know, all these things are only taught and written in the book, told by people. It's almost like, you know, when we talk about stories about the ghost, you know, nobody says, I saw a ghost. Everybody says, someone saw the ghost. Yeah. Then we don't know, you know, everybody says, someone. Who's that someone? Someone. And if someone says, okay, I saw a ghost, he is like that, he is like this, that, it's more reliable. And then God is same too. Like people say, somebody saw God. In the history, someone saw it. Okay, God knows. I don't know. So I also thought like, okay, what about these realization and experiences taught in Buddhism and so on. But then one thing is, even these days, you know, he's still very much alive. He's now around, maybe I think he's 80s or in 90s or something. There's one monk in Tibet, okay? He's 80s or 90s. And sometimes when he gets sick, then he's taken to the hospital. Normally he's in a retreat center, in a remote place. And really, I'm not lying. And I know, you know, very close friends who are taking care of him sometimes when he gets sick. They take him to the hospital and so on. During the winter time, when it's, you know, completely covered with snow, even during that time, he doesn't need power, he doesn't need heater. He's producing as much energy to really melt the snow around his house. Really. That's for sure. You know, even, I don't know, even the heater, does it melt that much? I don't know, you know. Even if the heater is that much hot, it might even kill him, right? But it's really melting. They told me, you know, during the whole winter, you know, the snow might come, but next day it's just vapor coming. That much is really possible. It's really happening. I heard there's a holy place in Nepal, somewhere between Nepal and Tibet, called Lachi, Malaripa's holy place. There I heard there are some great practitioners. So they're not like, I heard, you know, they're not as powerful as really melt the snow and so on, but they can, at least they can, they can live in a very, even in the winter when there is snow and so on, they can live, by wearing a very thin robe, very, very thin, like wearing only this much. And even these are like, bare skin, showing the bare skin, they're totally fine. That much is possible. And I personally know sometimes in some of the Himalayan, some of the monasteries in Himalayan regions, sometimes people, when they finish 3 retreat, they come out one day early in the morning during the winter time. And sometimes, there's snow and very cold and so on. So these, these monks, they would wear only a very thin white curtain and then walk like this. Some of them, they really shiver because their practice is not good. But some of them, they're really warm, Some of them, we are also like laughing a little bit. I can't do that, okay? But from these, it's really, what I found is, especially the one who is in Tibet, I really feel like, okay, this is not just a philosophy. This is not just a story. I would rather not believe 1,000 stories written in the book, but I definitely believe him, I know my friends, they're really, really crazy about him because they really saw him. But then, it's a human nature. Even though he's such powerful, such a great master, he gets sick, okay? He gets sick. It's a human nature. Sometimes I feel like in sutras, in Buddhist sutras, we talk about, Buddha, if he wants, he can live for thousands of years. I don't believe that. I don't think he'll live. Because, nobody can break that nature of, law of nature. Not even Buddha. So the whole point of Buddhism is really to understand, adapt and face it, right? So even this great master, such a great master, he gets sick sometimes, and then he will surely die. I can guarantee that he will not live for 1,000 years, okay? He will surely die, but physically they will get sick, they will die, but the one thing is, mentally, even when they are sick, even when they are dying, I can guarantee they won't be disturbed. They will be very, very peaceful. They will be very, very, very peaceful, that's for sure. And for them, it's almost like, telling them that you're going to die, you will not live long, maybe you will only live for a few months. For them, it's almost like for me, somebody telling me, let's go for lunch. They're like, okay, I know it. So that kind of, result is really possible. So what I'm trying to say is, now if we go back, earlier when I was talking about Vajrayana tradition, so Vajrayana tradition have certain practices that are unique to Vajrayana tradition, that are not taught in Sutra tradition. So this kind of power that can really, melt the snow and all these things comes from Vajrayana tradition. But being able to maintain this peaceful mental state in any situation and so on, this is taught in all traditions of Buddhism. So now I hope we understand the difference between Theravada Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism is the goals. For the Theravada Buddhism, it's about liberation. For Mahayana Buddhism, it's about enlightenment. But we need to achieve enlightenment before we achieve. We need to achieve liberation before we achieve enlightenment. Okay, that's the difference. And between Mahayana Buddhism and Vajrayana Buddhism, difference is only in the method, not in the goal. We have the same goal, and so that's why even for Vajrayana Buddhism, we also need Theravada practices. We also need Mahayana practices. Okay, but the Mahayana people who practice purely Mahayana Sutra tradition, if they don't want to practice Vajrayana tradition, it's not like they are wrong. Okay, so these three traditions, I hope it's clear. Is it clear? I'm sure it won't be very clear. Even for us, it took many years to understand it. But at least I hope that you have this. I hope that for a moment you have this very healthy ignorance of thinking that I understood it. Okay? And then, for all these three traditions, all of them have practices regarding the morals or morality. Okay, so for all these three traditions, because literally everything comes with some rules and regulations, right? These days, on the phone, even if we want to download a very insignificant app, it comes with all these rules and regulations that we have to agree. Sometimes these rules and regulations, what agreement? It's such long, and they know that nobody reads it, right? But still, it comes with the rules and regulations. So. So then, of course, if we want to achieve liberation, for anything that we want to achieve, there are certain rules that we must follow. There's no choice. There's no choice. Everybody wants to be to be happy. Everybody wants freedom. Everybody wants freedom. There's no one who doesn't want freedom. But no freedom comes without rules, without discipline. And in some way, the best way to achieve freedom is also by discipline. Right? Without discipline, there's no freedom. Really. It's almost like, okay, let's not talk more. If you want to be happy, there are also certain things that we must do. There are certain things that we must not do, whether we like it or not. If we want to have a healthy connection with people, there are also rules that we must follow. And if you want to be educated, if you want to learn something or whatever, if you want to do well in our jobs or something, there are also rules that we must, certain things we must do, certain things we must not do. Even for health, so everything comes with the rules and regulations, right? Certain things should be done and certain things should not be done. Personally speaking, for a long time, I thought like, okay, in Buddhism, so these three traditions, all of them have their own rules. Theravada Buddhism, it has its own rules, which we call vows, because these rules, usually it's applicable only if people take the vow. It's not like, okay, even though you're not Buddhist, but you're breaking Buddhist rules. There's no such thing, okay? So these rules are really more like rules for the people who take the vow, okay? So we have something called, three vows. The vows for the Theravada tradition, vows for the Mahayana tradition, vows for the Vajrayana tradition. So even in the past, I used to think, okay, because I'm a monk, and so I got my own set of rules that I must follow. Sometimes it's not that easy either. Really, like even just to even in the towns or market, I can actually just look anywhere. What is this? Who is this? Well, but I feel like, okay, I should be careful. If there's a woman or something, I shouldn't look, because then people think, okay, this monk is looking at a woman. Right? So I should, okay, if I think something is setting, I should look at a man, and then it's fine. So there are rules and regulations, okay? And rules and regulations. So I used to think, okay, I'm a monk, and I have all got so many rules to follow. And then I don't want to care about all the two rules. But then I felt like, okay, then I realized, okay, if we, even to be healthy, we have to follow, even to be healthy in this life, if we have to follow certain rules, then how can we achieve liberation and enlightenment by doing whatever we like? That's not possible, right? There's certain things that we must not do, certain things we must do, otherwise it's impossible. It's not like, I want to be very educated, I want to be very knowledgeable, but I don't want to study. That doesn't work, right? You have to study diligently. That's the rule, right? So in the same way, they all have their own rules. But the rules are simple. Rules are simple. We have so many rules, countless of them. Sometimes I feel like, why they talk about so many rules, especially when nobody really follows them, not even the Buddhists. But if you really study them, the point is also very, very simple. The rule for this Theravada tradition, the basic point is, don't do something that is neither good for you nor good for others. Don't harm anyone. Okay? Don't harm yourself, don't harm others. It's just that rule, the basic, the bottom line is that. It's simple, right? In some way, they talk about maybe 250 rules for the senior monks and whatever, 30 rules for the junior monks and so on. But what is the point? The point is just don't try to harm anyone. That's all. Okay, as simple as that. And then for the Mahayana Buddhism, the rule is also simple. The point is just always. Sometimes we talk about. We talk about bodhicitta, we talk about two types of bodhicitta, the intention and the action. So the intention is, we should always have this intention to benefit as many sentient beings as possible, And here the rule is, we should, as someone who practices Mahayana Buddhism, we should never think, the rule is, we should never think that there are certain person or certain sentient being that we don't want to harm, we don't want to help. The moment when we think, okay, I want to be a kind person, I want to be a generous person, I want to be a nice person to everyone except this one, then finished. Then you have broken that rule, okay? We understand that sometimes it's not possible to help this person. Maybe we don't have the ability to help that person, okay? But it's not like even one day when that person needs our help, and even when at that point, even if we have the potential or opportunity to help that person, if we think, okay, I don't want to help that person, then we are not bodhisattva. Then we can't follow Mahayana tradition. It doesn't work, because we have broken our rule by excluding. For us, one of the biggest challenge we face for that vow is the mosquitoes. Because in India, especially in Bodh Gaya, so many mosquitoes. So the mosquitoes, we have war with the mosquitoes, and sometimes we feel like, I want to benefit all sentient beings except the mosquitoes. We are like, why you are even born, For what? So this is something that, we, at least, so for that, for me, what I do is, practically speaking, I always feel like, okay, one thing is, okay, there might be people that don't like me, and I don't know is there any people that I really don't like? I don't know. But I think if there are people that I don't like, I think mostly, if I'm safe enough to say it, I really don't like people who, create wars and so on. It's really so difficult for me to, they look nice, gentlemen, politician, president of certain country, prime minister of certain country. But if you are creating wars for nothing, for your own goal, how can we like you, You're just creating sufferings for so many people, And there is no point of, sometimes I feel like, I don't know, this, for me, the hardest one to like is really them. And then, of course, there are also people who really torture innocent people. It's really difficult to like them, right? In my personal life, I really don't have people that I don't like, I, even though I might have a little bit of conflict, but I also have my own problems, my own flaws and weaknesses. But these type of people, especially people who really like to, I feel like, even these people, they like to just kill animals for fun. It doesn't make sense to me. How can it be a fun? So for me, these type of people, or this type, a little bit difficult to like. Otherwise, at least I feel like I don't have anyone that think, okay, he or she is my enemy, And as a Buddhist, I would really, I really think that we should never label anyone as our enemy. That person can change, right? That person can change, and we might have our own problems and so on. So anyway, we should, someone who follows the Mahayana tradition and keep the vow of Mahayana tradition, we must never include anyone from our heart. It's difficult to think that, okay, I want to benefit all sentient beings. At least we should never think that, we should never think that, certain people or certain, I don't want to benefit. Okay, that's the rule. That's the intention. And the action is then, whenever there is a chance to help someone, then we always try to use that chance. And I think, sometimes to being generous and helping people, if we take it as some kind of obligation, then it becomes quite difficult for us to do that. So whenever there is a situation where we can, where there is a chance, where somebody needs the help, and there is a chance in the situation, there is the chance, and we have the potential ability to help. And then if we don't help that person, and that helping is also really, we know that it's beneficial, and still if you don't help that person or that sentient being, then we break the vow. So even though these are complicated, but we can understand that these rules are actually very, very good, right? And this is not just some kind of philosophy or something. For us, it's difficult to follow all of them, but we should understand there were people in the history who really followed that rule. Okay? So, so that's why it's, sometimes we might think like, people won't be able to do it, but we have to understand that there were a lot of people who did it. Just because we can't do it, just because I can't be nice to you, doesn't mean that, we should not appreciate the teachings that talks about being kind. Okay? So we have this kind of, I have to talk until 12, right? Okay. Okay. Okay, so we do have this kind of rules. And it's more like, instead, rule doesn't sound, I'm sure, rule doesn't sound that good, but ethics, okay, it's type of ethic. And I think, in some way, in some sense, it sounds like, okay, rules and regulations, ethics, it seems like, personally speaking, okay, it's difficult, whatever. But I think, I think if, people have this ethics, people following this rule. Like, you're the type of person who follows this rule. You're the type of person who have this ethics. I think it's wonderful, right? So for me, like, I feel like some people call me Khenpo, which is more like a, advanced Buddhist teacher, okay? It's very difficult to translate. It's actually abode. In India, abode means one monastery has only one abode. He sees, he oversees the monastery and gives them ordination and so on. But in Tibet, it changed. Now it almost sounds like Buddhist teacher, okay? That's all. The rule is changed. So anyway, usually I really don't like, I don't write Khenpo Lekthong, okay? I don't like it. I actually don't even like that title. In Buddhism, it's almost, I don't have any title that I really like, okay? Anyway, but sometimes when I go to certain places and, I meet, maybe I go to a family and maybe someone's house or something. And then sometimes, maybe they don't know anything about me. And then maybe they don't feel that safe, right? They might have a little bit of hesitation, something. So I tell them, like, my name is this and that. I'm from that monastery. I'm Khenpo. And what does it mean? Then they will think, okay, so he's a Khenpo, so he might not misbehave because he's a Khenpo, right? He's a big person. At least he should. He will think about himself. He can't just randomly misbehave, right? So I want to make sure that I want to make them feel safe, that you can trust me because I have this title, which means I have got my own rules, right? So in the same way, I feel like, okay, I'm a monk, so which means I have rules. You might think, okay, he's a monk, so he must have, lot of rules. He must be suffering because of his rules. He must be stupid, not having fun. There might be people that, sometimes people think like, why you don't marry, They even say, that life is very boring. People even say such things. But sometimes, what I think is, I'm a monk, okay? So if you are with a monk, okay? A good monk, okay? Let's say, if you are with a good monk, so what we can do, the things that we are not allowed to do, we're not allowed to kill, okay? And then we're not allowed to steal. There's an amount in the oldest monastery code. There's an amount that if you steal more than that, you break the vow. But the amount is so controversial. The scholars argue this and that, nobody knows, because the value of that amount is changed. So we're not allowed to steal. And we're not allowed to have section. Can I say that word? Okay. What is the right word to say that? Sorry. Okay, physical connection. Sorry.
Sexual misconduct.
Not even sexual misconduct. Sorry to say sex, okay? We're not allowed to do that. I heard certain words must not be used. Apology for it. And then also we're not allowed to tell supernatural lies, saying that, I've seen ghosts in a house or whatever, or I can read your mind, or you can have faith in me, I'm a Buddha or whatever. We're not allowed to tell all these lies. So then when you're with me, when somebody is with me, what it means, I'm a monk, and follow these rules. What it means, because I'm not doing any of this, so then you don't have to worry that I'm not going to harm you because I'm not allowed to harm. If there's a woman, if there's a monk, we're not even allowed to touch, then how can we take advantage of that woman? And then these days I see everywhere, in the offices or whatever, there's always these, people taking advantage of women and small girls and so on. Then people say very bad, very bad, very bad. It's of course very bad, right? But the good thing is with us, okay, we're not even, totally safe. You just be yourself. And because we are not allowed to steal, so if any money you have, don't worry. We're not allowed to steal. And we're not allowed to fool you. And then if you're with someone, let's say you're traveling with someone who has this rule, isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? You don't have to worry, right? For me, sometimes if I have to travel with someone who thinks like, okay, maybe this person is going to steal something from my suitcase or bag, it's very uncomfortable, or quite often I have to pack and then, lock my suitcase, and then it's very uncomfortable. To stay with someone, like sharing room with someone, We don't have to, every time when we go out, or every time when we go to the bathroom, we don't have to close our suitcase or hide our money. There's so much fun, So this is actually, the whole purpose of following these rules and so on. Okay? So, these are the monastic rules of Buddhism. So now the question is, do you think everyone follows that rules? No. We fell. And actually to keep the monastic vow is much simpler. Much simpler. To keep this bodhisattva vow, really wanting to helping people, and all these things are even more challenging. It's even more difficult, okay? So for such thing, when someone who follows, especially Mahayana tradition, breaks the vow, not being able to follow it, sometimes they get angry, upset, whatever, sometimes they feel like they want to give up, but then of course they can't give up and so on. And then what can they do? So in Theravada tradition, when a monk breaks a certain rule, not the serious one, because if they break the very serious one, then they have to leave the monastery. But if they break some minor rules, then when there's a gathering of monks, they would, go to them and then, confess by telling them. Or sometimes they would go to their own teacher and then tell him, I'm sorry, I've done it. Okay? But this is not like, in Christianity, somebody confessed to father or someone, right? And then he has this father or priest has the authority to forgive. Is it? Okay. So in Buddhism, we do that. We go to our teacher. It's not like that teacher has the right to forgive and now we are purified. It's more like now when we do that, when we face someone, a person, and we really say it, we really confess it, it means we really mean it. And then psychologically, it can be very helpful to us so that we won't do the same thing again. Okay? So for that reason we do it. So in Mahayana Buddhism, when such thing happens, Buddha says that we can also confess to the sanghas or our teachers, but even more than that, we can read Sutra with 3 sections. Okay? Good news. Finally I came here. Finally. I went here. Finally Sutra of 3 sections. Some of you might have thought, okay, he will never come to Sutra of 3 sections. That's not. I'm not that bad. So the Sutra of 3 sections, and for that, historically speaking, you have to understand, the Sutra of 3 sections is actually taught in Mahayana Buddhism. It's not taught in Theravada Buddhism. It's a Mahayana thing. Okay? It's a Mahayana thing. He told me to say thing. Thing. I've been really struggling to say the words like the world. Is anyone understanding? The whole world. He's saying like, world. So dear. I feel like I didn't use my lips for a long time. Last time when I came to, 2 years ago when I came to Samye, people said, okay, you speak very good English, we understand everything, we're so happy that you speak English, you're so nice. Everybody was like, I noticed that the Scottish people, so many people are struggling to understand them. At least, they're saying, I think they understand my English more than the Scottish accent. So I was quite proud, okay, I'm quite close to British. I'm thinking like, okay, I'm going to, I'm very soon I will sound like British. Okay, hopefully. The last year I spent, something. It's a monk from Samye. He's the one who, he helped me to give me food and so on. So quite often he checked my English. And I was shocked, whole life, there are so many English words that I always thought, I know. People always understood it. But then I learned, I was always saying in the wrong way. Can't even say the ball and the ball. So difficult. And then when I met him, then all my confidence went down. Now, no hope for the British English anymore. As long as you can understand my English, I'm really grateful. Okay. Okay, so Sutra of 3 sections is a Mahayana thing. And Sutra of 3 sections, one thing that I learned about it's actually in Mahayana Buddhism, actually we have many types of sutras. In China, they have different lineage of sutras. There's the lineage that follows the Lotus Sutra. There's a lineage that follows the Avatamsaka Sutra. There's a lineage that follows the Amitabha Sutra, Pure Land Sutra, and so on. There's a lineage that follows the, Diamond Sutra and Heart Sutra, and so on. There are different lineages in China that also influence, Japanese Buddhism, Korean Buddhism, and so on. In Tibet, there's a lineage of following certain tantras, okay, not sutra. There's no lineage of sutra. Like Sakya is a follower of one tantra called He Vajra. Gilug is a follower of one tantra called Guhaya Samaja. And Kagyu is mainly follower of Chakra Sambhava, something like that. Okay, so there's one lineage called Chonang. For them, is the Kalachakra Tantra. But in China, is the follower of a certain sutras. Okay, so there are certain sutras. You can just read one sutra and not reading other sutra is fine. Okay, it's almost fine. Because most of these sutras contains the most important points. So it's almost fine. But Sutra of 3 sections is really for all Mahayana Buddhism. It's for all Mahayana Buddhism. Okay? So, when we talk about sutras, traditionally they were all told by Buddha. But when we do research, the certain sutras are very old in terms of the manuscripts. Okay? So we talk about it from few different perspectives. Sometimes because of the manuscripts that we find, checking how old they are, and sometimes because when did they were translated into other languages, like in Chinese or other languages. Okay? From this we can also measure the time a little bit. And sometimes we can measure how old certain sutra is, like Chandrakirti, one Mahayana Buddhist scholar from India. He belonged to maybe 6th or 7th century, maybe 7th century or something. So then, in the text that were written by him, if he is talking about certain sutra, then at least we can know that that sutra existed before him, flourished before him. And then some researchers, they say, okay, existed, but exists is very difficult to say. Okay? At least we can know at that time the sutra flourished, that sutra already flourished, right? So, at least many of these Mahayana sutras, usually we say Mahayana Buddhism is, the oldest Buddhist tradition is Theravada Buddhism, and the Mahayana Buddhism is quite new thing. But one thing is very certain: the Mahayana Buddhism, that this tradition, these sutras existed at least 2000 years ago. And then Buddha came in this world 2500 years ago, or maybe according to some sources 2000, around 300 years ago. So I personally think it's very difficult to say that Mahayana teaching was not taught by Buddha himself. How can we say? It's very difficult. We can do research, we can have theories, but sometimes I feel like, even the theories, sometimes we have to take some responsibility. We can't just say whatever I think, So anyway, so among these sutras, some of them are very, very old because they were translated into Chinese language maybe around at least 1,800 or 900 years ago. And there was one sutra which is very old called Upagra Pricha. And this one, I'm not sure, I'm pronouncing it correctly. In Tibetan, it's called Chimda Taksha Jinji Shibato. So it's a Mahayana sutra. There's one, maybe somebody like a sponsor who's a lay person who has family and so on. He went to Buddha and then asked him how a lay person should practice bodhisattva, Mahayana Buddhism. How a lay person can practice it. So answer to that question, Buddha taught that one. And then that sutra is very old because around that time, maybe 2000, maybe around 2nd century, there was one guy who was actually a businessman, was from Iran, and they went to China. And then he working with one Chinese monk, they translated that sutra. So it's very, very old. And we still have that translation, a few different translations in Chinese, one translation in Tibetan. So we read it. So in that, it talks about, the Buddha says, he gives something like 23 main practices for lay bodhisattva. And one of them is that the lay bodhisattva, lay person who practices Mahayana Buddhism, should chant Sutra of 3 sections, 3 times in the morning, 3 times at night. Okay? And then there are some scholars. There's one Japanese scholar called Hirakawa Akira. I think now he already passed away. And then he says that sutra is actually different from what we are reading these days. But I don't know the reason why he says that. There must be some reason. I personally feel like I don't agree with him. It's hard to say that this is not the one. Because in that sutra, it doesn't give any information. It just says one should read the Sutra of 3 sections, 3 times in the morning, 3 times in the night. Doesn't say the contents of that sutra. Okay? So that's one sutra of 3 sections. Either way, if that is something different from this sutra, then we don't have it. We don't even have Chinese translation. We don't even have Tibetan translation. It almost doesn't exist anymore. Okay? But from this, we can understand this, this Sutra of 3 sections, the tradition of chanting it, at least 2,000 years, almost 2,000 years. It's very old. Okay, we understand that. And then, in Tibetan, I think also it's also in Chinese Buddhist canon, but in Tibetan, we also have a Sutra of 3 sections, something called Mahayana Sutra of 3 sections. It's quite a long one. I found it's quite helpful to read that to understand these Sutra of 3 sections because they basically have the same meaning, but that one is quite longer. Okay? So we do have that one, but that one, not many people read it. Not many people read it. Not many people. I almost think nobody read it. Okay? Then we have this sutra of 3 sections here. So this sutra of 3 sections is actually a part of one bigger sutra. Maybe it has, I don't know, maybe it has 50, 60 pages, and it's called Vinaya of Mahayana Buddhism, which is requested by Upali, something like that. Okay? And so this one is actually Mahayana Buddhist Sutra, but then, because usually in Mahayana Buddhism, even though it's Mahayana Buddhism, but many of them, according to these sutras, are actually requested by this arhats who follow the Theravada tradition. Like they were arhats. So for them, they don't want to practice Mahayana Buddhism. They don't want to practice Mahayana Buddhism. They don't consider themselves as Mahayana Buddhists. But they respect it, they admire it, and they want to understand it. So they keep asking questions to Buddha. Like when somebody a bodhisattva, great bodhisattva does something great, and then they ask the question to Buddha, like, why is so great? What makes bodhisattva special? What the bodhisattvas should do and things like that. So Buddha answered these questions, and this becomes Mahayana Sutra. It's not a Theravada Sutra, it's a Mahayana Sutra, because the content is Mahayana Buddhist practices. So I feel like this is very much like, some way we might think like, why then they even ask questions? Why they bother about it? Right? If you don't want to practice, then when you talk about it. And this is, I think, these days in many places, right? It happens, right? There are people who don't really want to practice Buddhism, but they want to know about Buddhism. They are interested about it. At least I have learned that, whoever comes to a monastery, they want to know about Buddhism. Who is he? What is it? What do you do? They just want to know. It's not like they want to practice. There are people who will ask, why you become monk? What should a monk do? Doesn't mean they want to become monk. So it's same thing for them. So Upali is actually a Theravada monk, but he asked the questions. But the whole story is before even Upala asked the questions, there was the Shariputra. According to this sutra, Buddha, he in the beginning of that, Buddha, he asked a question. There are a lot of bodhisattvas here. In the future, who is willing to benefit sentient beings? So then there are something like 38 bodhisattvas. Each of them rise up and then tell Buddha that in the future, I want to benefit beings by doing this and that. Some says, I want to benefit beings by giving teaching. Some says, I want to benefit beings by doing meditation. Some of them like, I want to benefit sentient beings by being a doctor and so on. Some of them, one bodhisattva's quality that I remember is, he says, I want to benefit sentient beings by giving light. I found it quite cute. He would be like, playing with light. I like his commitment more. So they do all these things. And then in the audience, there was the Shariputra. And he was really surprised. And then he thought, okay, so these bodhisattvas, usually their commitment is, even if there's hell, or even if they have the, life danger, even if, not just the danger, even if they have to sacrifice their life, they have to benefit sentient beings, any sentient beings that they can. So this is for the high level, okay? It doesn't mean that we have to do the same thing, but we should remember them as inspiration. Like, there are people who sacrifice everything. Doesn't mean we have to sacrifice everything, but if there are people who can sacrifice everything, we might be able to sacrifice a little thing, right? So there are steps, okay? Not all of them for everyone, okay? We have different levels, and we just follow our own level, okay? At least we should have the appreciation, the admiration that there are people who did it, right? So Shariputra, he says it's impressive, How can they even do it? And the Buddha tells Shariputra that arhats like you will not understand the commitment of bodhisattvas. And then he says, he talked about it by using 4 examples. I don't remember now. But one of them is like donkeys. I think this is the one. Donkeys will not understand, if they are load, lot of stuff. The donkeys think it's impossible to carry. But actually, elephant, they can carry it easily. So for the donkeys, they will think it's impossible, but actually it's possible. So the donkeys, they won't understand it. So in the same way, arhats, they will not understand the commitment of bodhisattvas because it's beyond their capacity, it's beyond their commitment. And then Shariputra, he asked the question like, so then this bodhisattva, they are so much dedicated, so much passionate, they are willing to sacrifice so much things. They don't even have any problems, emotional problems, like they have no problem with the desire, they have no problem with the desire, no problem with anger, ignorance, because usually for the arhats, they talk about being monk, just leave the society, go away, achieve liberation, leave the samsara, run away. So for the bodhisattva, it's more like go back to the society, help the people, deal with people, interact with people, right? So we talk about sometimes using lotus, because lotus, even though it grows in a mud, but it keeps clean. So in the same way, bodhisattvas, it's like, they are in the samsara. They are in the samsara, but they are not really in the samsara. Okay? So so that's why it's very challenging for the bodhisattva. It's very difficult for us to do it. If we can keep our inner peace, mental peace, in something like a very noisy environment, like a disco hall or somewhere, it's very good, but it's impossible for us, right? If they can do it, if you can benefit a very rude people, it's very good. But for us, it's very difficult. So that's why we try to benefit the kind people. Right? So that's why bodhisattvas, because they have to remain in this samsara, they can even get married, have children, and so on. So that's why it's very difficult. It's very challenging for them. But the thing is, the challenge is very meaningful for them. Okay? I think you are with somebody, like, I even think like, okay, not say that. If you are with people, like, you have your family, husband, wife, children, and if you are practicing patience with them on a practical level, it's much, much better than monks like us just sitting alone and practicing patience, right? But it's very difficult for you, but the challenge is very meaningful, right? So these bodhisattvas, they have the challenge of desire, challenge of anger and ignorance and so on. So Buddha, then he says, yes, bodhisattvas, the advanced bodhisattvas, because they know emptiness, they know everything is like a dream, so they don't take things too personally. So it won't be able to affect them. But for the beginners, of course, it's challenging. It can be challenging. So then he says, he talks about this, he talks about these three negative emotions, which is quite profound and quite inspiring too. So he says, desire is not that bad, because in some way, when we talk about desire and attachment, at least, these days I think, in toxic relationships, really desire is very harmful. Obsession, desire, attachment, anything. Because it's too selfish. I want you for myself. Right? But usually, the healthy love, it has attachment, it has desire, but it's not harmful. It's not that harmful, right? You might lose some level of freedom. I might lose some level of my freedom. I will really be upset if I lose something. But at least still, it's life. Not that bad, right? But these days, so-called love is very, very toxic. Okay? So the Buddha is talking more about this healthy kind of attachment and desire. So then this one, Buddha is saying that the attachment is not that bad, but it's also very difficult to get rid of. It's true, right? Attachment lasts quite a long time. Attachment or desire, we think it's gone, and then one day we realize it's still there. The people, we might feel like, okay, I already forgot you. But then one day, something reminds us, and then okay, I miss you. So it really lasts for a long time, but it's also not that bad. That's what Buddha is saying. And then Buddha says, anger is very harmful, but also it's not that difficult to get rid of it. The good thing about anger is sometimes it's just gone by itself. Right? I'm very angry in something. I remember one time when I tell some stories, people sometimes ask me, did it happen when you were a monk or before that? Because they want to know whether I'm a good monk or not. At one time, I almost had a fight with one of my friends, who's also a monk, okay? So, we're having tea and there's something happened. I got very angry, he got very angry. So usually we don't fight in the monastery because it's very bad. That's what I think. And then behind the monastery there's a hill. You have to go through the forest. And then sometimes people say some people fought and they went there to fight. We heard this. I don't remember anyone who went there to fight. But sometimes we have this saying. So my friend, he was saying like, I was very angry. I don't even remember what happened. He was very angry. And then he was telling me, let's go to that place and fight. I said, no. He said, why? Are you afraid? I said, no. If we fight, we have to fight here. Because otherwise, if we go up to there, maybe I will not be angry anymore. Then there's no fun, we can't, we can't go there and then fight simply because we came all the way here to fight. There's no point, And then it will be very awkward to go there and then you have talk, I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And then it becomes very funny. All the people sitting around us, they're all laughing. He's also laughing, and then both will say, okay, let's not fight. So the thing is, because the anger doesn't last, it's gone by itself. It's a good thing, right? Someway, because otherwise it's very dangerous, right? So Buddha, he says, anger is very bad, very harmful. Anger is really bad. It's very harmful because forgetting about harming others, when we have strong anger, we even want to harm ourselves. So from this we can understand how much, the anger is bad. And then Buddha says, ignorance is something that's very harmful on the long term, and also very difficult to get rid of. Okay? So from this we have understood, certainly, even though Buddha is talking about these three negative emotions, mainly for the bodhisattvas, but we all have these negative emotions, so we can understand them a little bit, right? So it's 12. 12 is the time, right? Okay, so we will see afternoon. What time is it? 1:30. 1:30. And I hope after taking lunch, what time is the lunch? Now? No. Yeah. Okay, so after taking lunch, I hope you can take a little bit of nap, because otherwise afternoon classes, even for teacher myself, I find very sleepy. I just recently, in Samye, while I was Samye, and I had all these, I always have very, very, very weird dreams. I even sometimes thought of writing them down, but I never got time to stay. So I was sharing this dream with the Katin Lama, and old Katin Lama, right, at the airport of Samye. He was laughing, when we were having breakfast. I shared this dream with him. In my dream, I was in Sikkim at a house of one Rinpoche that I know. And so there were a lot of people. I was giving teaching, and there were a lot of people. And I was half sleeping. Who is coming? I was sleeping. I fall asleep even while giving teaching, and I was a little bit embraced and so on. And then there was someone who asked me a question, said something like, in order to which Buddha should we choose? I can't hear it clearly. And then some others were helping me. Some others were helping me to say what he was saying, say what this guy is saying. So then one person said something I couldn't understand, then other person said it, and then I finally, okay. So he was saying more like, in order to achieve enlightenment, which Buddha should we choose? And then I was thinking, okay, this one, I can answer it confidently. And then the mic was not working. And then I was fixing the mic, and then finally the mic was working. And then I was about to give the answer, and everyone already left. I told this to Samye Katin Lama, and he was laughing. Okay, anyway, it's better to take nap a little bit because, okay? Take two. Sutra